Back on midday now with your weekly segment of News to You. The closing of a beloved Buffalo restaurant chain is among the many morsels on the plate of our weekly walk back through time. Here's Channel 2's Dave McKinley serving up another edition of News to You.
10 years ago this week, as construction was just starting on the Outer Harbor Park near Wilkinson Point, UB hired Bobby Hurley as its new men's basketball coach. And a year after Anderson Cooper made sport of Dingus Day on national television and did not accept an invitation to come see it himself, crowds were still demanding Cooper. So organizers did the next best thing and suspended a Mini Cooper from the side of Central Terminal. Oh, and lawmakers in Albany passed a state budget of $135 billion. The one they're considering this year is $227 billion, an astounding 68% increase from the one adopted just 10 years ago this week in 2013. 20 years ago this week, Michael Moore was jeered at the Oscars for his rant against President Bush and the Iraqi war effort at a time when the body count of American service members was growing.
How do you feel about Saddam Hussein?
His remarks, seen as insensitive by many, nonetheless touched off a trend of stars hijacking the ceremony to air their political views. That same week was when NBC's Brian Williams began telling an incredible tale about a close call in a military helicopter.
With that, someone else removed the tarp, stood up, and put a round through the back of the chopper.
Yeah, that turned out to be a whopper and one of many tall tales he'd tell about it, which eventually got Williams suspended before resurrecting his career on MSNBC. Meanwhile,
for about $1 million a plane, we can put this on every plane.
This week's News to You pop quiz, what big idea to keep commercial airliners safer do you think Senator Chuck Schumer was getting behind this week in 2003? Here's a hint. It is yet to be implemented in this country. Remember, this was back when, amid growing concerns over terrorism, the Sabres enacted a new policy and began wanding fans with metal detectors and searching their bags. When you still had to go through the Ogden toll barrier, when Phantom of the Opera came to Shays for the first time, when 300 million Americans still had Hotmail accounts, and when Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who served as a U.S. Senator from New York for 24 years, died at the age of 76. 30 years ago this week, when at dances we spun records, when many of us still had a phone on the kitchen wall, when the NFTA Metro still sported its once familiar orange, brown, and yellow livery, when Siskel and Ebert were still a big thing, and when there were no less than 3 movies on competing television networks about Amy Fisher and Joey Buttafuoco. Unable to talk them out, the FBI was starting to shine lights all night and piping loud, annoying sounds toward Branch Davidians, hoping to rouse them from where they were holed up in their complex in Waco. Meanwhile, back in Buffalo,
it was the end of an era.
I can't believe it.
The reaction the same all over Western New York today as stunned patrons arrived at your host restaurants to find the doors locked, the shades down, the closed sign up.
What began as a hot dog stand in Kenmore in the 1940s had over the decades grown into a ubiquitous chain of 40 diners in the region, the end of which finally came this week in 1993.
I think it's terrible. They're part of Buffalo.
And to this day, I'll wager that if you ask anyone who was around here back then, they'll still be able to tell you which your host they went to the most, back in the days when it was all News to You.
Thank you, Dave. So here's the answer to this week's News to You pop quiz about the idea supported by Senator Chuck Schumer 20 years ago to improve airline safety. It was to equip commercial jets with their own missile defense systems at about $1 million a plane. Though the technology has existed for 2 decades, Israeli airlines are the only carriers to have them on board. How'd you like the old rotary phone in the story? Ours growing up was olive green.
Yes.
It was in the dining room right next to the kitchen.
And the cord that could like literally take you to a house across the street.
Right.
That was like 40 feet long.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
you'd go around and wrap around rooms, and that was cool stuff.